Welcome, everybody. I'm glad that quite a few of you have come along. So the idea of this session is actually both to inform you guys and gals, but also to, we're going to record it. And so we'll then use that as the basis for building some better training materials on how to create websites. And what we're particularly interested in things, you'll go, I think, fairly quickly through the initial making a website, default website, and doing a few little things to it, but also want to look at things like how do you add new components, how do you get rid of components and add new components in their place, how do you scale things on the screen, how do you change the styles of things like the header and so on and so forth. So that's the agenda, and over to you, Michael.
Yep. Good evening, everyone from Australia. It's a pleasure to have you all here. So basically, my plan for the session is I'm just going to make a Heurist website on the screen in front of you, and I'm going to cover what I think are the basic things, and hopefully that'll take maybe 20 or possibly 30 minutes. And then basically what I'm hoping for is that people will start to ask questions about how to do this or that thing that they'd like for their own website. So please do ask me things that you want to do for your websites, and I'll try and show how to do them in the session if I can. And if I can't, well, that'll be a bit embarrassing, but I'll try. And that'll take us to the hour then. So, but there's no need to wait. If you have any questions, just use the raise hand feature. I should be able to see that, and you can interrupt me. That's not a problem. And I might just make Ian co-host so he can also see the raised hands and tell me if I've missed someone. Okay, so let's get started. So here I have a database that I created just now. If any of you have watched my training videos, you'll see it's a clone of my World Leaders database, which I use in the training videos. So that might look a bit familiar to some of you. It's getting a little out of date now. Actually, I probably should update who some of these world leaders are. So let's just go right to the beginning. To create a Heurist website, you go to the Publish menu and you click Create. I think many of you have done that already. And if you want the website to be non-public while you're working on it, you can click Hide Website. It doesn't make much difference for this database, so I'm just going to leave that unticked. Okay, so when you come into a Heurist website, you see this. We provide you with a basic website structure, which you can keep or you can get rid of. Like, there's nothing compulsory about any of these. I can just delete one of the pages if I wish. I don't want the contact page. I'll just delete it over here. Just say remove menu entry and submenus, no problem. So the question everyone has, of course, is, well, I've got this website. How do I make it relevant for my project? And basically, as a starting point, there are three kinds of things you might want to do. The first one is to set up the overall website. So at the top here, you see unconfigured site title, your logo here, use website editor to set title, and so on. You might want to change that. You know, you have a look at these menus you've got here. You might not like that. You'll want to change that. So that's the first thing. You want to set up the overall structure of the site. The second thing you might want to do is put a bit of information on the website about you or your project. So you might want to write some paragraphs of text describing your research. You might want to put some images of yourself and your research team on the website. That's the second thing. And I call that creating static pages. And I'll show you why I call it that in a minute. So that's called creating static pages. There's something in the chat, which I can't see the chat. Why can't I see the chat? Ian, are you able to see the chat? Is that an important comment in there? I don't know why I can't get it to appear on my screen. Oh, you're muted.
I will keep an eye on the chat and ask you any questions that come up.
Okay, good. I think
and also letting new people in.
Okay, it won't let me look at it while I'm sharing screen.
That's fine.
Okay, perfect. So that's the second thing, creating static pages. And the third thing, of course, is you probably want to provide access to your database to the public. So I would call that creating an interactive page. So they're the three things you want to do. You want to configure your website, create static pages, and create interactive pages. And these three things are done in different ways in the Heurist web editor. So we'll start off by configuring the website. There's actually two different ways of achieving this. So I'll show you both of the ways. One way is you're here in the website editor. You see this unconfigured site title, you want to change it. If you click on it, nothing happens. If I click down here, I can just start changing this text, but I can't change what's in the header. That's because the header is generated in a different way to the rest of the website. If I want to change what's up here, I need to go over to Site. I'll just discard those changes. And you'll see over here, there's a button that says Edit Website Layout / Properties. And if I click on that, you'll see a familiar Heurist data entry form. And you'll see here is the title that's appeared on the page, unconfigured site title, use website editor to set title. So this particular website is for the world leaders database. So I'll make that the title. And right now I don't have a good image. It says your logo here. I can put a new image using the logo image field. So let's say who's an important world leader. We could choose George Washington. And I'll just get an image of George Washington. And that can be the logo for our website. So here's George Washington. Just I'm actually going to download this image. You could link to an external image, but for the logo for your own website, I would recommend having an actual file. So let's click here for logo image. I'm going to choose a file. And I'm going to use George Washington. Okay, so at the very least now, my site has a title and a logo that suit me. So that's probably good enough to start with for configuring the overall appearance of the database. And for some reason, just on my computer and apparently on no one else's, it sometimes does this. And I don't know why it does this on my computer. But no one else seems to have the same problem. So there you go. All right. So I said there were two ways of configuring the overall website. So one way is over here in the site menu. You can see all the different pages in the website, and we'll see how you can use that to add or delete pages from the site. And you can edit the website layout and properties. You can actually do this in your Heurist database, and sometimes it can be useful to do it that way. And maybe at the end of the session, I'll show you an example of when it's useful to do it in the Heurist database. But if we just go back to the Heurist database, which I have in this other tab, and I look at recent records, you'll see here, there is a record for the whole website. And then there's a bunch of records for the pages in the website. And if I double click on the website record, you'll see I get exactly the same data entry form that I saw just before. And I can make changes here, like get rid of the in the title. And if I save that now, if I refresh the website, you'll see that the title's now changed. And yeah, I don't understand this at all. It only does it on my computer, where sometimes this thing disappears. Okay. Right, here we go. So that's the first thing, configuring the overall website. So did anyone have any questions about this aspect of the web editor to start with? We'll come back to it for some more advanced features in a minute. No? Okay, great. Now, the second thing I said you might want to do is to create what I call a static page. Truly, if you know about web development, it's not truly a static page, but I call it a static page because it's not interactive. When a user visits it, they just see a page with some content, some text, some images, and so on. So an example of a static page is you might use this project background page that we suggest you create. And you might have some background that you want to type here about your project. You know, now, when you're laying out a static page, it's actually normally pretty simple. You know, I would recommend that here. I would recommend you use what in Heurist is called static layout. So if I hover over page here in the tree view to the left, I can see, you see how the content of the page is lit up. There's not much content, there's just one section, one sentence, but the whole content of the page is lit up. And if I insert some more content, like for example, another bit of text, if I highlight page, you'll see the whole lot gets lit up, all the content of the page. Now, if I click the little hamburger icon here in the tree view to the left, I can access the style menu, which allows me to change the way things look and behave. In web development, that's called style. Style's not just about the look of things, it's also about their layout and their behavior. Style has a bit of a bigger meaning in web development than in ordinary life. And you'll see that the type of it is simple. Now, when things are laid out in a simple way on the web, it means that each element is as wide as the screen, and they just occur on top of one another in an ordered list. So you'll see that the page here is laid out in a simple way, and that means that this content appears at the top, and then this other element appears just below. And if I added another thing, anything, if I added a contact form, an email us form, it will appear below, just one after the other on top of each other. That's sometimes actually called static positioning. So another reason why I call this a static page, but in Heurist, that's called simple layout. And what I recommend is that for pages where you are just showing information that's just text or images, that you use a static layout like this. And I might just give you an example of that on one of our projects. Sorry, I need to go to the website. We're here on this page. The opening page here is an example of a static page. You'll see there's a text element, then there's an image, then there's a heading and some more text, and you just scroll through and you see everything one after the other. And similarly, if you go to the project team, it also uses a kind of static layout. This page actually is constructed in a slightly different way, and it's loading a bit slowly because of my internet connection. But it too is just a static layout, and you can scroll down, and right now it's decided it doesn't want to work. But the point is that's a static layout where you just scroll down, you see things one on top of the other. So the third thing I said you might want to do on a page like this is to create an interactive page. And I guess this is going to take a little bit longer to explain because it's a bit more complicated. And when you make an interactive page, you often don't want things just one after the other and have someone scroll through. What you often want is to have multiple components next to one another or in a particular arrangement, and you'd like them to grow and shrink on different screens in an elegant way. And that can be hard to achieve. And that's for some deep reasons. When the internet was invented, it was invented to allow people to create documents, like Word documents. Whereas in the 3 decades since its invention, people have wanted to create interactive applications on the web. So web technology has to be slightly altered and hacked to make it possible to create interactive applications. And for that reason, it can be a little bit tricky to get it to do exactly what you want. So when we give you a website, we provide you with this default Discover page, which gives you access to whatever filters you've defined in the website filters folder, and it gives you a map, and it gives you a record view. So if I just close the editor for a minute, if I click on search for world leaders and type in a world leader's name, you'll see over here on the right, I get the result view. I can click on Robert Menzies, and here in the middle, I can see him on a map. And this particular world leader was the Prime Minister of Australia. So Australia is highlighted on the map. If I click on it, I can get information about this man. And you'll see that these three components are next to each other. They're not on top of each other. So the usual simple positioning is not going to work. If I just use simple positioning, then they'll just be one on top of the other. So how do I achieve putting them next to each other and have them work on different size screens? For that, I need to use what in the Heurist interface is called flex layout. And in fact, it's also called that in cascading style sheets, the language that drives formatting on the web. What a flex layout allows you to do is to collect a bunch of pieces of the page together and allow them to grow and shrink depending on the size of the screen. So you will have just seen that these three elements shrank quite well when the menu on the left appeared. And if I move this menu around, you'll see that they maintain a certain proportion. They still look good even when the screen grows and shrinks. Now, flex layout can be a little bit complicated. So I'm just going to change some of the settings here so that you can see the difference. So one thing, for example, is that this discover section of the page has not just type flex, but direction row. I can change that to column, and you'll see that that puts the elements on top of each other, and it kind of breaks the layout for various reasons. So we obviously want this to be a row. We want this to be a row of items rather than a column of items. There's also, you'll see that the wrap feature is on no wrap. Wrapping is when, well, I'll show you what wrapping is. If you look at the text here, this text wraps. When the box shrinks, the text just moves to occupy another line. So now this paragraph is 3 lines long. And if I shrink it again, now it's only 2 lines long. The text is wrapping. When it gets to the end, it just wraps round to the front and wraps round again. Now you can actually make these items here in the flex box do that. So if I change the wrap setting from no wrap into wrap, and then I shrink this, you'll see eventually the result pane, the result view disappears out the bottom because it's wrapped round. Whereas if I turn it on to no wrap, you'll see that that doesn't happen. So that's what the wrap setting does. These main axis alignment and cross-axis alignment and align content, they can take a little while to remember what each one does. But when you have a flex box, it's over 2 dimensions. So in this case, this is a row flex box that goes from side to side. So that's the main axis is the side to side axis. And actually in this particular example, you might not see a huge difference from me doing these different things. But along the main axis, you can have the items cluster at the start. You can have them cluster at the end. You can center them, or you can put space between or around them. In this case, it's not going to do anything because these 3 items, the save filter, the map and timeline, and the standard filter result all stretch out to fill the space. So that makes no difference. And likewise, these other alignments make no difference. If I get a chance, I'll show you an example where these things do make a difference. They can be useful when you have images and you want the images to appear nicely. The other thing to show you is that you may want things to be different sizes. So let's say, for example, you don't want the map. I'm just going to delete the map out of here. Let's say you just want to have the filter and then the results of the filter. That's all you want. And you look at this and you say, but I don't like how the result is twice as big as the filter. I want them to be the same. How would you achieve that? Well, when you're using the flex layout, in the simple layout, you can't control it this way, but when you're using the flex layout, you'll see that there's this item proportion information down here. And it takes two pieces of information. This number here is called the flex basis. I mean, it just is called size actually in our interface, so let's call it size. And that's the kind of starting point, the initial value for how wide something is. So let's call them both 300 pixels. If you call them both 300, you see that they're almost now the same. They're almost the same width, but not quite. If I expand the screen out, they're still not quite the same width. That's because the standard filter result, this slightly wider element, has a proportion of 2. Its growth factor is 2, so it's going to grow. Let me just make this first one 1. If the first element here has a growth factor of 1 and the second one has a growth factor of 2, that means as the screen expands, this one on the right is going to grow twice as much as the one on the left. That's what those numbers mean. It's a bit hard to get your head around, but that's what they mean. So if I want the two items to be exactly the same width, I need to make their growth factors the same. So you'll see that now that they're both 1 and both 300 pixels as the basis, now they're exactly the same width.
Just to pick up on that,
yes.
Would you explain how to make one of them, say the search box, which you don't need to grow at all, how to make that one stay the same size?
Okay, if you want one to stay exactly the same size, no matter how big the screen is, then you need to approach it a slightly different way. I appreciate these things can be a bit subtle. This information here, this item proportion, if you think about it, this thing that's called discover here in the tree view is a container that holds inside it the saved filters and the saved filter result. And this container tries to control its children. It tries to control its contents. If you want one of the things inside to disobey the container and always stay exactly the same size, then you need to go into that item. So for example, saved filters, and you need to give it a fixed width. So for example, we could give it a width of 200 pixels. And then down here, and then, so it's now got a fixed width of 200 pixels, you'll see. And up here, we'll give it a growth factor of 0. I've just changed its growth factor to 0. And now it's always going to be 200 pixels wide. And that might seem a bit weird because although inside the saved filters widget, I made it 200 pixels, up here in the container, it still has 300 pixels here, but that sort of gets overridden by the 200 pixels that I applied specifically to the element. Okay, does anyone have any questions about that? I've gone straight for this issue of how to lay out pages because that's the thing that most people seem to have the most trouble with. Does anyone have any questions so far?
I think there's one question and one I want to ask, which is related
please.
to the last one. So I'll start with the one that's related to the last one. You set 200 pixels there for the component itself, the widget itself. Mm-hmm. There's also a CSS down below where you can set it. Do you want to explain a little bit how those work together, and classes?
Yeah, so, okay, I'll come to classes a bit later. That's a bit more of an advanced topic. But so yeah, if I go to save filters here and go style, so yeah, we give you this sort of form here where you can fill in some common things that you might want. Like, you know, I've shown you just the width of the item, but you know, there's other things. You can change the background color. You can put margins. So for example, you can put this is padding inside. This is an inner margin inside the item. So you'll see that the content now has sort of white padding around it. Or you can put a margin on the outside, and then you'll see that the actual purple border, the item is shrinking because the margin is on the outside. So we give you this form to fill these things in. And what the questioner has asked about is this CSS down here in the edit source section. What I'll draw your attention to is you'll see that as I put the margin of 10 pixels around each border, down here in the edit source, you now see margin left, margin top, margin bottom, margin right. And you'll also see the width 200 that I put there before. So, and you'll also see, this might be a bit confusing, but you'll also see the flex property with the growth factor of 0 and the initial width of 300 pixels, which was put there by the containing element. So basically, I show you this just to say, to clarify the relationship, as you change things in this data entry form here, the particular code that describes how this object should be laid out is changed. And you can see that code in the raw. You can see the actual raw code down here. So you see those changes I just made, they've now disappeared because I removed them from the form. So I hope that answers the question of whoever asked that.
Actually, it was me.
Oh, it was you.
Anyway,
okay.
Yeah. But for the edification of everybody, there's another question. This is from who's it from? From Regis, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Once the map's removed from the website, can we retrieve it? Can we put it back, for example, if we didn't?
Good question. So let me do this from scratch. I'm going to delete this whole Discover section.
No, put it back. Put it back in the. It'd be good to put it back in the page where you're in.
I will, Ian, but I'll just show.
Okay.
I will. Yeah, but let's do something even more drastic. I'll delete the whole Discover section. Oh, it's gone. Damn. Now, I don't think we provide at the moment. There's not an undo operation in the web editor. Maybe in the future, but not right now. So, oh damn, I need to get this back. So I'll show you the process right now. So I'll go up to page, the top level of the document, and I'll click the little hamburger icon and say insert. Now you remember, to make those widgets appear properly in the page, they need to be in a container with the flex setting turned on, which lets me control how they fit together. So we provide several different kinds of container, or 3 kinds. You'll see them down here. There's a group, which is just a group of things. There's an accordion where you have multiple sections, and when you click on one, it'll expand. And when you click on the next one, it'll expand and the others will shrink and so on. And there's tabs where you can have multiple, well, I think you all know what tabs are, just like here in Chrome, tabs like this. Now, obviously for this use, we want a group. We want just a group of things next to each other. We don't want tabs or shrink or bits that expand and contract. So we'll just go for a group. I'll insert that. So there's a group now, and by default, it gives you a little text box inside it, but we don't want the text box. So I'm just going to click on the little hamburger icon next to that and delete it. Now you might remember that before in the tree view, group was called Discover. And now it's just called group. It's very easy to put the word Discover back. I'll just click the little hamburger icon and open the style menu. And here in group, I can call it Discover. Now that doesn't change anything, I should tell you. It's just a label for your convenience. So you don't have to do that. It makes no difference to the performance of the site. It's just a label that helps you understand how the things in the tree here relate to what you see. Now inside the Discover section, I initially had 3 different components. I had a widget that let me use saved filters from my database. I had the map and timeline widget that let me view records on the map. And I had the saved results, the standard result view widget, which let me see results from a search. So we need to put all 3 of those back. So let's say I insert the map and timeline. Then I'll insert the saved filters. Then I'll insert the standard filter result. So the 3 different components I used were the map and timeline, the save filter result, the standard filter result, and the saved filters. They're the three things that I've just inserted. So there they are. And you'll see that they're all completely wrongly laid out. They're on top of each other and they're all squashed and I can't really see them and something's gone dreadfully wrong. Well, I need to make the Discover section into a flex box that lays them out properly. So I'll open the style menu for Discover and I'll change it to flex. And yeah, it's a row. I want them to be laid out across. These other things will look good, but they still don't look right. I can't quite see everything. I would recommend making this flex box. Let's give it a height of 100%. Okay, still doesn't look that great. Something's wrong. I can't see the map at all. Well, you'll see down here that all of them currently have size auto and a growth factor of 0. So let's give all three elements a growth factor of 1 to start with. Okay, that's looking a little bit better now. Now when I look at it, I can see the map and timeline, the save filters, and the standard filter result. But I think the widths are all a little bit off. The map is too skinny, the save filters are too wide, and the standard filter is too skinny as well. So how about we make the map, we'll give it a basis of 300 pixels. We'll give the search a basis of 200 pixels, and we'll give the results a basis of 300 pixels. That's looking a little bit better. But there's still a problem here, which is that they're in the wrong order. Initially, the map was in the middle, and maybe that's what you want. I can change the ordering over here by just dragging the items. So if I want the standard filter result to be on the left, I'll just drag it to the top. And now it's on the left. If I want the map to be on the right, I can just drag it down. And I can just drag them till I have them in the order that I want. Now, one thing that I like, and I know Ian agrees with me on this one, is I like with these interactive components to fill the whole vertical width of the screen. So I'm going to get rid of this text at the top. So you can delete an element from the page by just clicking the hamburger icon and clicking delete, as I showed before. And I'm just going to make, I'm going to make the page, I'm going to give the page a height of 100%. And I'm going to give then the Discover a height of 100% as well. Oh, and something's changed because normally that does what I want. It's not doing it. Something is different tonight to usual, which is unfortunate. Well, I was thinking that would make them fill the whole screen, but obviously it hasn't. So
this does seem to be a bit of a problem with your computer, because
it often happens just on my computer, yeah, that it does this funny thing like this. Let me just do a proper refresh. Oh God. Sorry, let me just get rid of this. Okay, I don't know why the 100% hasn't worked, but later on I'll show you a way of when we look at classes and adding CSS, I'll show you how to really make sure it works. Okay, does anyone have any? Basically, I've now shown you the two main things that I like to do, that I think are, sorry, I've now shown you the three basic aspects of building a Heurist website and laying it out with this focus on layout. There's firstly editing the overall structure of the site. I haven't shown you how to insert or delete a page, but I can show you that in a minute if anyone doesn't know how to do that, though I do cover that in the tutorial on our website. I've shown you how to edit the title and give a logo. I've shown you how to just when you might want to use the simple layout, which just lays things out down the page in blocks. So I think that's a good layout for when you just have a static page with just some information and maybe one or two basic widgets like the contact form. And then I've stepped you through how to use the flex layout to build a more complex layout like this one here. So for the rest of the session, I was hoping that people would present me with problems they're having with their websites, and I can show you how to solve those particular problems. And if not, I can show some somewhat more advanced features for people who want to use, for example, a little bit of their own CSS code to change the way the website looks.
I definitely think that showing a bit of CSS to, for instance, change the color of the and the width of the heading, stuff like that, is definitely something people would want to do. And we want them to do it because we don't want all the websites to look exactly the same.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, look, this page here is a little bit of a problem for me because it's not this for some reason this section's not it's not filling the whole screen. So maybe if I put that as flex, can I do it? No, that won't do it either. Anyway, so well, how can we fix this? I'm now going to show you a little tool for people who want to start getting into fiddling around with websites. There's really useful tools built into your web browser, whether you use Chrome or Firefox or Safari or Edge. Edge is actually just Chrome, for those who didn't know that. It's actually built on Chromium, which is the fundamental software that makes Chrome. So Chrome and Edge are really very similar. There's built into it the developer tools, which I've just opened by using a keyboard shortcut, which you couldn't see because you can't see my keyboard, but you can open the developer tools by clicking on here in Chrome. You click on the settings icon, go down to more tools, and you can see developer tools. And if you use Safari or Edge or Firefox or something else, you should be able to find the developer tools. And if you can't work it out, then just Google open developer tools in my browser and put the name of your browser and you'll find it. So one nice thing about the developer tools is it lets you inspect the page in a little bit more detail. We provide you with some basic ways of inspecting the page, but you can see more detail and you can sort of fiddle around with things a little bit more using the developer tools if you know how. Now, the reason I bring this up is simply that it'll give you an example of when you might want to use some CSS. So it's maybe a slightly advanced example, but it's at least makes the problem clear. Okay, so the problem is this element here is not filling the screen, and that's kind of a bit annoying. So if I hover over, you'll actually see it's called div and then hashtag main content. So this little hashtag icon is actually used to give an ID to elements in HTML. And you can actually give an ID to anything on your page. If I go to these save filters, for example, I can give it an ID. Down here in the edit source, I can call it my saved filters. So I don't need to put the hashtag here. I just put the actual ID, so my saved filters. And then if I go back to the developer tools and hover over this thing, it can be a little hard to get it to hover over exactly what you want. But you'll see this, can you see that thing that's highlighted, see how it says now div hashtag my saved filters, because it's the name I just gave it. And what this can do is it can give you a way of targeting a bit of CSS code at different bits of the site to change how they look. For example, if I open, if I go to the website menu and I click edit website layout /properties, and I go to advanced, you'll see there's a section here that says custom website CSS. CSS is the language that's used for styling, formatting web pages on the web. And I can say, I want to do something to my saved filters. I want to make its background red. So this is the basic syntax of CSS, and I'm not going to try and really introduce this language to you right now. If you'd like to learn about CSS, there's a little bit of information on our help pages, and also on the tutorial system on our website, there's some links to some introductory content about CSS. So I've given 3 links: one for if you know nothing, one for if you know something, and one for if you already know a bit.
Also, Regis has given us a couple of very useful links which we can add in.
Perfect.
And the other thing is, I think that the audience here is mostly, probably reasonably familiar with CSS.
Sure. Perfect.
And if not, they can go to the links and find out about it.
Yeah. So there, you'll see I've just targeted this particular element that I've given the name My Saved Filters and made its background red. So with a bit of luck, this should work. I hope that I've given myself permission. Yeah, there we go. You can see
that Regis says he loves red backgrounds because your website then seems to perform faster with the grid.
Okay, so we obviously don't want that, so let's get rid of that. So let's get rid of that. Right. Okay. Now, the problem I had was that this main content element won't expand to fill the whole screen. So this might be something where I want to use some CSS to fix this. One option. So there's different ways of fixing this. I could just go into the website editor and go to the Discover section and say, okay, I want you to be 800 pixels tall. Use the pixel unit. And that will sort of fix it. But the problem is that not every screen is 800 pixels tall. So this will not scale for different people's computers. It's just always going to be the same height. At the moment, here in the Heurist interface here, you can only use pixels or percent. And for some reason, normally the 100% does work, but for some reason today, it's, I don't know why it's not working. So what we might want to do then is apply some CSS that uses a more sensible unit than percentage or pixels. So just to give you, I won't try and explain this particular unit, but just to give you an example, we'll go to advanced. I'm going to target that main content element we saw before. The main content element is basically a box that contains every page. Like when you load a page in a Heurist website, Heurist finds the main content element and puts the page content in there. So it's like the frame within which your website appears. And I'm just going to give it a height of 60 VH, or let's say 70 VH. VH means viewport height. In other words, it's 70% of the screen. The percentage thing before means something a bit different. This is 70% of the screen. And so depending on a person's device, whether it's a phone or a computer or a massive TV, it'll be 70% of that. And I'm just going to put also this important, which means it's going to override anything else that it finds. And if you're hacking into Heurist and want to change a particular thing using a bit of this custom CSS, you'll find you often need to put important to override the complex system that Heurist already has. So let's just save and close that. And look, now it's a lot bigger. In fact, this area is occupying 70% of the height of my screen. And if I make the screen bigger, you'll see it's it expanded because now my screen has more space, so it's now expanded.
So related to Pascal Joubot asks, what's the priority order between custom website CSS and the CSS you put directly on the page, on each page?
That's a good question. So let me just.
I'm glad you asked me that one.
So if you style an element here and do this, it's an inline style, so it takes precedence. If you do custom CSS using the website record here, that is injected into the head of the document, and it will be overridden by particular styles that you do here, because for those who know about CSS, inline styles that are inside the HTML element take precedence over styles that are recorded in a more general place. Does that make sense, Pascal? I can't see your face, so if you're nodding, I can't.
Yeah, it's perfectly clear.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Pascal. All right. Okay. So I've showed you one way of targeting parts of a Heurist website with CSS. That's to give an element an ID and then target that ID. Another way is you can assign a class to an element. So, for example, maybe several of your pages all have one of these discover sections that do the same thing, that are laid out like in a row with a certain height, and they all have main axis alignment, space between, and they all have wrap, and you don't want to edit all this individually on every page. You want to just define it once and then have all the pages the same. So you might do that by using a class. So for example, on one website I've made, I have a class called interactive section. And I apply this class to all interactive sections of the website, and then they're all structured in the same way. So I can just assign a class to something. So now this discover container has the class interactive section. Now the main difference between, for those who are a bit unsure about this, the main difference between a class and the ID, there's two important differences. Number one, only one item on the whole page can have a certain ID. You're not allowed to have two items on the page that have the same ID. You can do it and the website will load, but it may have unpredictable behavior. So you shouldn't ever have two things with the same ID. Classes, multiple things can be of the same class. That's why it's called a class. The second difference is that IDs take precedence over classes. So if I apply some CSS to the interactive section class, it'll be applied to this discover element. But then if this particular discover element is like my special discover element, if I then apply some CSS to the thing with this ID, that will override whatever I applied to the class, because an ID is more specific. And in CSS, the more specific your description, the more precedence it has. So I hope that makes sense. So anyway, so again, it's the same process. I've given the name interactive section to this part of my site. So I can open up the CSS for here, and I can say to that particular class, I can I'm just doing a it's something that you'll see the difference it makes. I'm applying to interactive section. I'm giving the property flex direction row reverse, which lays things out in a row but swaps their order. So if you look at it right now, you'll see that the save filters is on the left, and then the standard filter result, and then the map. And if what I've done works, they should, the map and the save filter should swap. So I'll just go save, and I'll refresh here. And there you can see the map and the save filters have swapped. So that's the second way of applying CSS. You can give a custom class to the items, and then you can assign some extra properties.
Now, do we have a convenient way of setting it up on the interface and then getting the CSS and dropping it in for your class definition?
So, sorry, what do you
Well,
you mean without flicking back to the
flex box? You set up with your flex boxes and so on, and you
Yeah.
get it the way you want it, and then you want to make that a class. How do you go about doing that?
Well, we don't. I guess one way you could do that is when you go in here. Yeah. So if you go to the flex settings here and you've decided, sorry, let me just get rid of that flex direction row reverse. Okay. Right. I'll just refresh to get rid of that. I changed. Okay. So let's say you go here to discover and you say, well, I want actually it to be a column layout, and I want there to be space between the items. And actually, let's just make them all 100 pixels wide. This is a bit of a silly example. And we'll make them centered and centered. Okay. Okay, they don't look very nice anymore. But let's say I did want that setting. You'll see that now down here in Discover, you can see all of those settings I've just made. So you could just grab them and copy them and then just put them like that. That would be the way that you would take. And if you do something, like for example, if you make it, if I go back, if I just make them all the way they were before, if I say it's a row layout and we have no wrap and this is where it was at the beginning, you'll see that that in the CSS down the bottom, there's no properties. That's because these things are the default in Heurist. So you don't, if you want these settings, you don't need any CSS because there's just the default. So that's why there's nothing here referring to any of those settings. This no wrap and stretch and
I think
so on.
that was a perfect answer to that question. Now I have a couple of other questions.
Yeah.
This is from Olga Semink.
Yeah.
This one is perhaps more, actually I'll do the second one. How, and I don't quite understand it. How can we get the nice search boxes back? They have little magnifying glasses.
Oh, so who's that from?
From Olga.
Oh, okay. So is this the search box you mean, Olga? I can't see you.
You had some search boxes for family name and stuff like that.
Oh yes, sorry. So I haven't shown you how to configure any of the widgets. So that's kind of is a question about configuring the widgets.
Actually, the next question was very much how to configure the widgets, and in fact, specifically, what was somebody was asking for widget specifications. I think it was you, Olga, in fact.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to,
yeah.
For our website, we would like to make a very advanced search form in which we can search the fields of the database, also combinations of fields and
okay. I'll show you. We've only got a few minutes left, Olga, so I'll just leap in. I'll show you how to do that right now.
Yeah.
So I'll show you how to configure the widget because I already made some searches. Then I'll show you how you change the search. So in this save filters, by default,
is also asking, but it relates to this. How do you define which filters are going to appear? Is it automatically website filters? And it's whatever you choose. In fact, you can choose which filters are going to appear.
Yeah, I'll show you how to choose which ones, Helen. So by default, it just shows you all the filters that you can currently view. So if you're logged in, like I can see all of them because I'm logged in, but members of the public would only be able to see website filters. But generally speaking, we just do this as a placeholder. You normally wouldn't want this. Normally most people want one or maybe 2 or 3 filters to choose from on a page. So what you do is I go to save filters here. I click the little hamburger icon. And so far, mostly when I clicked on this style element, we've just been looking at this style section, which is the same for everything. But when you click on one of these interactive widgets, you see there's a button, configure widget. So I'll click that. And that opens up the settings, which, oh, geez, I'm having some troubles tonight, which is blank for some reason. Let me just refresh. Okay, let's try again. Click configure widget and it's blank. Oh dear. Oh, okay, that one's working. All right, so I'll go back to save filters, the one you want to change. There we go. Okay, so this is the saved filters widget where you can take filters that you've created in the explore menu and then put them in your website. So you have 2 choices at the top. If you've created a folder or a work group with some filters, you can just pick that work group. So for example, website filters, and you can display all of the filters in that work group, and visitors to the site can click on one to open the search form. The more common situation is that you just have one filter you want on the page that you've configured that has exactly the search boxes and so on that you want. So we'll go to choose specific filters and we'll just pick one. You can pick more than one, but let's just pick one. I've made one before called search for world leaders. So I'll choose that. Select. And then
you can also usefully, if I can comment, you can usefully select all filters in a particular, for instance, the website filters work group, and trigger one of the filters with the third drop down there, or third arrow, and say that wants to be loaded automatically. But if you cancel that one, then you'll get all the other ones coming up.
That's another common pattern. So the other thing you need to do is this puts the filter on the page. If you want the filter to run when the page starts, then you need this trigger this filter on page load. So I'll just click select and I'll choose that search for world leaders. That's all you need to do. And now if I do that, save element, save page, you'll see that now, oh, we just see this. You don't see anything else now, you just see that. And because I've only picked one filter for this page, actually, that's all you'll ever see. Just these 2 search boxes and female and male. Now, to understand this trigger the filter on page load, at the moment, it doesn't do much because the filter doesn't do anything unless you put a word in. So only if you put a word in does it do something. But if I go, if I want to change the behavior of this filter, I do that back actually here in the database. Here in saved filters, I can edit the filters that I've created before. And of course, I could create a new one using the facets builder or the filter builder. Normally for a website, you want to create a faceted search that has an advanced search form that you can put different things in. But I'm just going to edit an existing one that I've made, which is the search for world leaders. Click the little hamburger to get to edit. And I'm just going to change one setting, which is up here. Display full set of records prior to facet selection. So that's currently unticked. But if I tick that, it means that before I type any search in, it'll just show me all of the, in this case, persons in the database before I've put any search terms in. So I'll just click save. And if I go back to the website now and refresh the page, you'll see it's different. When the page loaded, the filter was triggered. And because the filter now, if you don't put any search terms in, just gives you all of the data in the all the persons in the database, you'll now see that all 6 people in the database appear at the start when you first visit the page. And they all appear on the map too. Because by default, all the widgets are just connected together. So if you do something in one widget, it affects all the others on the page. You don't need to configure that. you can configure all the widgets in Heurist. They all have different options. So for example, the standard filter result, you might want the results to appear like this, and you might not want the user to be able to choose. You might just want it to be fixed. So it has to be like this. To do that, I'd go to the website editor. I'd go to standard filter result, style menu, configure widget. And I could say initial view mode is going to be single lines with an icon and title. That's the view I just picked then. I'm not going to have the view mode selector, so that's unticked. I can see it actually because I'm logged in, but if I logged out, there we go. So there's no view mode selector, and they're in the format that I want. And if I search now, you can see I can filter the list and just drill down to the particular results that matter.
You have lots of options also on the map. For instance, if you don't want that legend to appear, you can cut that out and you can put the controls on or not. There's a whole lot of things. You can choose the default map layer, all of those sorts of things.
The big things you can change on the map is you can change the appearance of the. I might just show you one or two of them. You can choose which of these controls appear, and you can change the appearance. They're the biggest things you can change. So if I configure the map, I can say, I don't want this gray legend thing in the top for people to control. I'll just turn that off. Sorry, the zoom's in the way. And I'd like people to be able to zoom the map. But I don't particularly want them to be able to search the map or add a map document. So I'll turn those off too. So I'm going to get rid of the geocoder. That's the searching thing. I'm going to get rid of the print icon. And I'll leave it like that. And then I can also change the look of the map by choosing a different base map. And you can just try them out to see which one suits your website. But one that often looks pretty elegant, I think, is the Stamen Toner map. It often looks quite elegant on people's sites. That's how it looks. So I'll just close out again, and there we go. So we've changed the look of the map, and it's a bit cleaner. There's not quite so many controls, and it's got this different look to it now. All right, I think that's actually brought us to time. So were there any final questions?
So Pascal asks, I have questions on the website design. We probably won't have time, but let's try. One, how do you control the homepage design? Can you include the homepage in the menus? How can you have specific banners or logos on certain pages like the homepage? I think we've covered that. Is there any constraint on banner size and logo size?
Okay, so I'll try and go through those, but just remind me if I miss one. Okay, so the homepage, there's actually two different options for the homepage. So your first two questions go together. So who asked the questions, Ian?
Pascal. It's me.
Pascal. Yeah. Okay. So so by default, okay, you see here how it says homepage and it's in a bit of a separate section.
Yeah.
By default, the homepage is actually stored in the record for the whole website. So if I go to the website, you'll see it has this homepage content field. You can, if you like, actually delete that. So I'll edit source. I'm just going to delete it. And if you do that, when you visit the website, instead of loading that homepage content, it just loads the first. Sorry, I refreshed.
Click on George Washington.
Yeah, it loads. You see, it loads the first page in the website, which in this case is project background.
Okay.
So, so if you want to have a page called home that's got a button in the menu, the way to do it is to go to site, add a new page to the website. And then put it at the top, and now you have a home page. It has to be at the top. I mean, that's probably where you want it anyway.
Okay, yeah.
It has to be at the top, and then that will be the home page of the website. So let's change it. Let's call it, just so you're convinced, my new home page. And that is this page I just created has this my new home page on it. And if I get rid of the page ID there, here's the home page. Now, of course, the home page that's provided by Heurist, you can reach it by clicking homepage here in the tree view, or by clicking the logo at the top left. That will take you back to the homepage.
Okay.
So you can and then you can just edit it like a normal page. But if you want it to appear in the menu, you've got to delete the default homepage and then create your own one.
Okay, that's
How
clear.
do you have specific banners or logos on certain pages, like the home, as you have on the home? So it's a way of
The
putting
short
specific-
answer, I mean, the short answer is no. You could, if you wanted, fiddle around with JavaScript. I mean, you can make the site do anything you want, really, if you do that. But to maybe give a slightly more technical explanation of how the site works, I'll just open up the developer tools again. I'll explain why you can't really make the header change depending on which page you're on. If you look at the structure of the Heurist site, you'll see that there's this thing called main header up here, and there's another thing called page footer. And by the way, you can move the page footer. I can show you that briefly at the end. And then here in the middle, there's this thing called ENT content full, and inside it is something called main content. So just have a look over here on the right. Things are going to flash in a minute, okay? And I want you to pay attention to what's flashing when I click discover. Okay, so you see that everything that flashed was here. The header, nothing happened. The footer, nothing happened. What actually happens in a Heurist website is that when you visit a page, this main content element is flushed, everything's deleted, and the new page is injected into it. So the header is always the same.
Yeah, we should perhaps comment that there is a capability to create individual web pages. It's in the same publish menu, but under individual page or something like that, standalone page, which doesn't have the header and the footer, and they're designed to be inserted into another website. So potentially, I mean, you could be WordPress or whatever, but they have to be included in an iframe, basically. We do actually have some people who are looking at the possibility of creating a component that would work with WordPress and with Drupal, but I don't know how far. That's probably some way away. So there is a possibility there to create things and insert them into the web page without the header and footer. But the header and footer, as Michael is saying, is kind of fixed. So the other one, is there any constraints on banner size and logo size? You can rescale the size of your banner if you want to. If you want half your page to be the banner, you can use CSS to resize it, I think.
Yeah, so if you want to change the size of the banner, yeah, you would need to use a bit of CSS, and I would recommend that you there's two things you'd want to do. The first is that you can create up here, custom page header. You can create your own header. We used to actually provide a template there, but it seems to have disappeared at some point. So you can change the header and you can change the layout of it and so on here. You can create your own elements. And even if you use the default header, you can target bits of it with CSS and change it. So for example, there's something called, the header has the ID main header. So if you use CSS that targets main header, so I'm just doing it here in the dev tools so you can see straight away. I could, I can change it over here. And I can also, you can change its color and the font and everything without, sorry, you can change the color by changing the color scheme of the website, which can be accessed from the edit website layout / properties menu. You can just change the color scheme wherever that is. I've forgotten which tab it's in.
Yeah.
I think the point is that anybody that's going to get this far probably can work it out for themselves, and if they can't, get in touch with us and say, what's the property that we need to change here.
And there is, if you really need a much different layout to usual, then there is the option of creating a PHP template, but you'd need to collaborate with us to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be just to sort of wrap up, show a couple of websites which are completely different, like the absentee map. And maybe also show MPCE's more analytical pages.
Yeah, so here are some of the websites we've been building last little while. So this is a website made by one of our artist colleagues in France, which contains oral testimonies from refugees from the Iranian Revolution. And you can click on these different parts of Tehran, and you can hear a story told by someone about an event that happened at that place during the course of the Iranian Revolution. So, I don't know if anyone here knows Persian. You can also listen to it in French.
Fancy behaviors on the buttons on the right.
Yeah. Oh, no, this was a bit of, yeah. There's a fair bit of custom coding in this one. But yeah, you can see what this looks like. So that's one website. This is one I showed you just before. So you might want to, oh dear, something's happened to this since I last looked at it.
It's your browser.
I don't know about that, Ian. I don't know, because it was all, so no, so I need to look at it. Something's
Everything's
changed.
getting squished by your browser.
Yeah. Well, if it's getting squished by Chrome.
Do the ranking, because this isn't so interesting. Do the rank.
Okay. So yeah, this site uses a lot of oh no, Ian, this is something that's gone weirdly wrong. I need to look at what's happened.
Well, it's happening on all the sites with your browser. I think it's your browser that's doing it somehow. This page, in fact, is a columnar display in which it includes calculated fields, and you can sort things according to the ranks of the most sold works or the most confiscated works. Here we go, something. Yeah. So it's actually doing calculated fields as it goes along, and then allowing you to work.
And you can, yeah, so these are in this database, these are the books that have appeared the most often in these different data sets, like that were pirated books that were stamped to make them legal again, or books that were given permission to be printed, or that were sold by this particular Swiss publisher. So that's what this shows, and you can view it in different units. You can see the number of copies of the books that were stamped or whatever, or you can just see the number of times that such a book is recorded to have been sold, however many copies it was, for example. And you can export the data into different formats. Yeah, so this site, we have a couple of sites that use this sort of tabular view, and hopefully we'll make that more available without having to do custom coding soon. Am I able to show Judaism and Rome, Eden, or not yet?
No. Yeah.
And hopefully nothing's happened to this in the interim. Oh yeah, I need to log in. Sorry, I've just paused share so I can log into that particular site because their site's not public yet. So do forgive me. I'm doing something, but the screen sharing is paused.
So somebody asked whether who I love the cyberpunky custom theme of the absentees. Was it implemented with just Heurist CMS features you've just shown us, or did the authors work with a Heurist core team? Guys, that's Michael. Yeah, Michael did it, and it uses quite a lot of CSS and JS, but it's inserted into the Heurist form, so it's not.
Yeah, I would say what Heurist provides to that site is all the interactivity, the display of the map, the putting the records on the map, the ability to have those pop-ups with the sound and everything. And on top of that, I just did the formatting so that everything had the wonky borders and the growing and shrinking. So the formatting required several dozen lines of code, but the actual
functionality,
really impressive bit of the site, the functionality, that's all just provided by Heurist. It's just the map widget stretched to take up the whole screen, and then the other stuff floats on top of it. So this is also a Heurist website. This one is also a more customized one, but if you look at it, you'll see it's not actually that different. You know, there's the heading, there's the logo, and here's the menu, and if you hover over one of these things, you can quite clearly see it's a Heurist menu with the grey drop down. One thing we use on this site, as with some other of our more customized sites, is the custom report feature, which I haven't gone into here. But for example, this thing over here, the last resources added, which shows the 5 most recently edited resources, that's a custom report. And that does require a little bit of coding, unfortunately, but not too many lines of code to create this, really just not very many.
And it's basically just HTML, but it helps you, sort of helps you write. So it's,
yeah.
Well, that's actually something, the custom reporting function is something we plan to work on beginning of next year and really make it much easier to use than it is at the moment.
Yeah, and you'll see here that there's another custom report here so the records have this particular view. And this is something that really is a core Heurist feature. It's very easy when you use these custom reports to add this nice image viewer that allows you to zoom into the images and look at them. That's just a part of Heurist you can just use. And then, you know, you can click on one of these keywords and bring up a list of all the things in the database that are linked to that keyword. A little slow to load because I'm in Australia and this database is in France. It'll be a bit quicker for you guys. So yeah, these are all of the records that have the keyword loyalty, which I just clicked on.
And this is interesting. Up the top, you've actually got a drop down there, which is actually a Heurist menu. It's a second menu on the page.
Yeah. So yeah, I can see the numismatic items, for example, and that's a widget that you can. Oops. Oh, I wonder why it doesn't like that today. Oh, there we go. That's a widget called the menu widget, that little drop down button. So you can use that. You can just add the menu widget to your website if you like, and you can incorporate an additional menu. So I think that's brought us to time. Pretty much. Unless there were any final questions.
There's 2 new messages. Maybe people saying goodbye. I don't know. So actually, with just the question on the map of the absentees, did you use JavaScript?
Oh yeah, there is. It's very. There's a little bit of JavaScript just so that when you click on one of those menu items, it expands. That's the only thing I did.
And then the other thing is, I wrote that the JavaScript and CSS were embedded in the Heurist forms. What are you calling the Heurist forms? Well, the editing forms that we've seen for editing the website functionality. So, you know, the custom JavaScript field and the custom CSS field. Well, thanks everybody for attending. It was good to see so many of you here for this. Have a nice day.
Okay, see you everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Michael.
See you.